The text message wasn't meant for her phone. Claire Morrison was teaching third grade when her phone buzzed with words that would change everything. Job confirmed. Timeline moved up. She won't see it coming. At 7 months pregnant, Claire thought it was just a wrong number, until the second message arrived. Payment transferred. Make it look accidental. Her husband David dismissed her fears as pregnancy paranoia, but when Claire found his hidden phone filled with messages from someone called V, she discovered the horrifying truth. The man who promised to love and cherish her had hired a professional killer. $200,000 to eliminate his pregnant wife because she'd become inconvenient to his new life. But David made one crucial mistake. He hired a hitman with a conscience. What happened next would expose a criminal organization responsible for 7 murders, transform a naive schoolteacher into a fierce protector, and prove that sometimes the wrong text message can lead to exactly the right life. This is the story of a woman who refused to become a victim, a killer who chose mercy over money, and a baby girl who survived a murder plot before she was even born. The text message wasn't meant for her phone. Claire Morrison felt the buzz against her hip just as she was settling her third graders into their reading circle. 23 pairs of eyes looked up at her expectantly, their small faces bright with anticipation for story time. She ignored the phone and opened the worn copy of Charlotte's Web, but another buzz made her pause. "Mrs. Morrison, are you going to read to us?" asked Emma, a gap-toothed girl in the front row. "Of course, sweetheart. Let me just check this quickly." Claire pulled out her phone, expecting a text from David about dinner plans or maybe her doctor's office confirming tomorrow's appointment. At 7 months pregnant, her life had become a carousel of medical checkups and preparation. The message was from an unknown number. Job confirmed. Timeline moved up. She won't see it coming. Claire stared at the screen, her hand instinctively moving to her rounded belly. Wrong number. Obviously. She was about to delete it when another message appeared. Payment transferred. Make it look accidental. Her blood went cold. The words seemed to pulse on the screen, each letter sharp and threatening. The book slipped from her other hand, landing with a thud that made several children jump. "Mrs. Morrison." Emma's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay?" Claire forced a smile, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I'm fine. Honey, just drop the book." She bent awkwardly to retrieve it, her pregnant belly making the movement clumsy. As she straightened, she caught her reflection in the classroom window. Pale face, wide eyes, one hand pressed protectively over her baby. For the past 3 weeks, she'd been receiving hang-up calls at odd hours. Twice, she'd noticed the same dark sedan parked across from their house. When she'd mentioned it to David, he'd dismissed her concerns with that patient smile he used when he thought she was being irrational. "Pregnancy paranoia," he'd said, kissing her forehead. "It's completely normal. You're protecting our baby, even from imaginary threats." But this text felt different, real, dangerous. She read the messages again, memorizing every word. Her phone buzzed a third time. "Confirm receipt." Claire's hands shook as she quickly switched the phone to silent mode. 23 children were watching her, waiting for their story, but all she could think about were those words. "Make it look accidental." "Mrs. Morrison, you look really pale," said Jake, a perceptive boy who always noticed when something was wrong. "I just need some water." Claire moved to her desk, phone clutched in her sweaty palm. She opened the desk drawer and pretended to look for something while reading the messages one more time. Her mind raced through possibilities. A wrong number had to be the explanation. Someone, somewhere, was planning something terrible, but it had nothing to do with her, except the hang-up calls, the watching, the feeling that someone had been following her. She looked at her phone again. Lock screen, unlock. Read the messages. Lock screen, unlock. Lock screen. The nervous ritual gave her something to focus on, besides the growing panic in her chest. "Okay, children, let's begin." Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. She opened Charlotte's Web to the first chapter, but the words blurred together. All she could see were those messages, burning in her mind like a brand. The story ended 40 minutes later, though Claire could barely remember reading it. The children filed out for lunch. chattering about Wilbur and Charlotte, their innocent voices a stark contrast to the dark thoughts swirling in her head. Alone in her classroom, Claire called the unknown number. It went straight to voicemail. No greeting, just a beep. She hung up without leaving a message. She tried texting back, I think you have the wrong number. The response came immediately. Delete these messages. This conversation never happened. Claire's hands trembled as she screenshot the entire conversation. Then she called David. Hey, beautiful. His voice was warm, familiar, safe. How's my favorite teacher and my favorite baby? David, I need to talk to you about something strange that happened today. Can it wait? I'm in the middle of showing a property to some very interested buyers. This could be the sale that turns everything around for us. It's important. So is this commission? Claire? We need the money now more than ever. With the baby coming? His tone had shifted, becoming slightly impatient. Can we talk tonight? I promise I'll give you my full attention. Claire looked at her phone screen, at those threatening messages. Tonight might be too late. Too late for what, honey? You're scaring me. I'm scaring myself. There was a pause. Claire, is this about those calls again? We've talked about this. The stress isn't good for the baby. That phrase, the stress isn't good for the baby. He'd been saying it a lot lately, whenever she brought up anything that worried her, as if her concerns were just symptoms of pregnancy hormones rather than legitimate fears. Never mind, she said quietly. I'll see you tonight. That's my girl. Love you. After he hung up, Claire sat in her empty classroom and stared at her phone. She checked the messages again. They were still there, still real, still terrifying. At 3:15, she walked to the parking lot with the other teachers, but she felt exposed under the open sky. Every car could be hiding someone. Every shadow could conceal a threat. She hurried to her Honda Civic, glancing over her shoulder as she unlocked the door. The drive home took 20 minutes, and she spent every one of them checking her rearview mirror. A blue pickup truck seemed to follow the same route she took, but it turned off 2 blocks before her house. Paranoia, she told herself. David's right, pregnancy paranoia. But when she pulled into her driveway, she noticed David's car wasn't there. Strange. He'd said he was showing a property, but that was hours ago. She checked her phone. No messages explaining where he was. Inside their small 2-story house, Claire deadbolted the front door and set the security alarm, something she'd never done during the day before. She moved through the rooms, checking windows, drawing curtains. In the nursery, she stood among the carefully chosen furniture and soft yellow walls, one hand on her belly. It's okay, baby, she whispered to her unborn daughter. Mommy's just being extra careful. But as she said the words, she realized she didn't believe them. Someone out there was planning to hurt someone. Someone had payment confirmed for a job. Someone was going to make something look accidental. Her phone buzzed. Text from David. Running late. Don't wait up for dinner. She tried calling him back, but it went to voicemail. At 8:30, Claire heard David's key in the front door. She was sitting on the couch, her laptop open, researching everything she could find about threatening text messages and how to trace unknown numbers. Why are all the curtains closed? David asked as he came into the living room. He looked tired, his dark hair slightly mussed, his tie loosened around his neck. I got some strange texts today. David sank into his recliner with a sigh. What kind of texts? Claire showed him her phone. She watched his face carefully as he read the messages. His expression didn't change much, just a slight furrow between his eyebrows. Definitely a wrong number, he said, handing the phone back. Someone's planning something illegal, and they typed the wrong digits. You should delete these and forget about them. That's exactly what the person said to do, because they realized they made a mistake. Claire, this has nothing to do with us. You're 7 months pregnant and stressed about the baby. Your mind is looking for threats everywhere. What about the hang-up calls? The car I keep seeing? David rubbed his temples. Honey, I love you, but you need to stop this. The calls are probably telemarketers with bad connections. The car is just someone who lives in our neighborhood. You're creating a conspiracy where none exists. Claire stared at him. His voice was patient, reasonable, but something in his eyes seemed distant, distracted. Where were you tonight? She asked. I told you, showing properties. The Hendersons want to see 3 more houses tomorrow. This could be a huge sale. Until 8:30. We went to dinner afterward to discuss their needs. David stood up, effectively ending the conversation. I'm exhausted. Are you coming to bed? Claire looked at her phone one more time. The messages were still there, still real, but David's certainty made her doubt herself. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe pregnancy hormones were making her see threats that didn't exist. In a few minutes, she said. David kissed the top of her head. Delete those messages. Claire, they're not meant for you, and they're just going to worry you all night. After he went upstairs, Claire sat in the darkened living room and checked her phone again. Lock screen, unlock, read the messages. Lock screen, unlock, lock screen. The nervous ritual had become automatic, a way to confirm that what she'd seen was real. But as she prepared to delete the messages, one more text came through from the same unknown number. Tomorrow night, you know what to do. Claire's heart stopped. Tomorrow night, she was supposed to have dinner with her mother-in-law, Helen Morrison, a monthly tradition that Helen insisted on maintaining. David always found excuses to miss these dinners, leaving Claire to navigate Helen's subtle criticisms and pointed questions about when she was planning to return to work after the baby was born. But what if the message wasn't meant for someone else? What if tomorrow night referred to something specific, something that involved her? She looked toward the stairs where David had disappeared. Her husband of 4 years, the father of her unborn child, the man who had promised to love and protect her. He'd seemed so certain that the messages were nothing. So eager for her to delete them and forget. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was being paranoid. But as Claire finally climbed the stairs to bed, she didn't delete the messages. Instead, she forwarded them to her own email address, creating a backup that couldn't be easily erased, just in case. Claire couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those words. Make it look accidental. Tomorrow night. You know what to do. At 2 a.m, she gave up and padded quietly to the kitchen for some chamomile tea. The baby had been restless all evening, responding to Claire's stress with kicks and somersaults that made comfortable sleep impossible. David's keys sat on the counter where he'd dropped them when he came home. His car keys, house key, and the small silver key to his office filing cabinet. But nestled among them was something she'd never noticed before. A second phone. Claire's breath caught. It was an older model, basic and black. The kind people bought when they needed something untraceable, something temporary, something secret. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The screen was locked, but when she pressed the home button, she could see notification previews, multiple text messages from someone labeled simply as V. Are you sure about tomorrow? She's getting suspicious. We can't wait much longer. Claire glanced toward the stairs, listening for any sound from their bedroom. David was a heavy sleeper, especially when he was tired from work. She had maybe 10 minutes before she risked waking him. She tried to guess his passcode, their anniversary, her birthday, his birthday. Nothing worked. Then she tried their baby's due date, and the phone unlocked. The messages with V went back 8 months. 8 months of intimate conversations, photos that made Claire's stomach lurch, and plans that grew progressively more detailed and dangerous. Can't wait to have you all to myself. She's making everything complicated. The baby wasn't part of the plan. We need to accelerate the timeline. Claire scrolled frantically, photographing screen after screen with her own phone. Her hands trembled so badly she had to brace her arms against the counter to keep the images steady. There were photos of a woman, beautiful, blonde, sophisticated, everything Claire felt she wasn't, especially now with her swollen belly and constant exhaustion. The woman was pictured in expensive restaurants, luxury hotel rooms, and worst of all, the house David had been showing her. The house that was supposed to be their future home, where they would raise their baby daughter. But the messages grew darker as they became more recent. She's becoming a problem. The baby complicates everything. There has to be another way. Trust me, I know someone who can help. Claire felt bile rise in her throat. She ran to the guest bathroom and barely made it to the toilet before she was sick. Morning sickness had ended months ago, but this was different. This was her body rejecting the truth she was discovering. When she returned to the kitchen, She forced herself to continue reading. There were discussions about life insurance policies, about Claire's schedule, about making things look natural, accidental, and then she found the smoking gun. Payment confirmed. 200,000. He says tomorrow night is perfect. She'll be driving home from your mother's house alone. Dark road, no witnesses. Car accidents are so common, especially when someone's pregnant and tired. Claire pressed her hand to her mouth to muffle the sob that escaped. David and this woman, this V, had hired someone to kill her. Not just her, but their baby. Their innocent, unborn daughter who kicked and moved and hiccuped inside her right now. She scrolled further back, looking for the beginning of their relationship. The messages started the week after Claire had told David she was pregnant. Her announcement, which should have been the happiest moment of their marriage, had apparently been the catalyst for his affair. She told me tonight, she's pregnant. What does this mean for us? I don't know. I need time to think. You know how I feel about children. Give me a few weeks to figure this out. But he hadn't figured anything out. He just let the affair continue. Let the lies multiply. Let the plan develop until someone's wife and unborn child became expendable problems to be solved with $200,000 in a staged car accident. Claire found voice messages from V as well. She plugged in earphones and listened to the woman's voice for the first time. David, sweetie, I know this is hard, but we talked about our future together. Kids were never part of that picture. You know that. And frankly, I'm not willing to share you with anyone, especially not with some needy wife and screaming baby. So you need to make a choice. It's her or me. And if you choose me, this problem needs to disappear permanently. The woman's voice was cultured, confident, cold. She spoke about Claire's murder as casually as someone might discuss weekend dinner plans. Another voice message, more recent. I found someone who can help us. He's expensive, but he's reliable. Car accidents are his specialty. No one will ever suspect anything except a tragic loss. You'll be the grieving widower, and after a respectable mourning period, we can be together without any complications. Claire sat in her dark kitchen, 7 months pregnant, listening to two people plan her death. Her baby kicked, as if sensing her mother's distress, and Claire rubbed her belly protectively. I won't let them hurt you, she whispered to her daughter. I promise. She continued photographing messages, building a digital archive of evidence. There were hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even photos of the woman trying on wedding dresses. David had been living an entire alternate life, one where Claire and their baby simply didn't exist. One message made her pause. The anniversary trip was perfect. Thank you for giving me the keys to our new house. I can't wait to start decorating it the way we discussed. Their anniversary trip, David had surprised her with a long weekend at a mountain resort, just the two of them before the baby arrived. He'd been so attentive, so loving, so present. She'd thought it was his way of reconnecting before they became parents. But he'd been with V the week before, and the week after, the romantic getaway had just been guilt, a bone thrown to the wife he was planning to discard. Claire found the contact information for V, Vanessa Sterling. Even her name sounded sophisticated and dangerous. Claire looked her up on social media while sitting in her kitchen at 3 a.m. Vanessa Sterling, marketing executive at a high-end consulting firm, graduate of prestigious schools, member of exclusive clubs, featured in local magazine articles about young professionals making their mark. Her Instagram showed a life of luxury restaurants, designer clothes, and exotic vacations. In several recent photos, Claire recognized places. The restaurant where she and David had celebrated her pregnancy announcement, the hotel where they'd spent their anniversary, the park where they'd had their maternity photos taken just 2 weeks ago. Vanessa had been shadowing their entire relationship, inserting herself into their most intimate moments, claiming pieces of Claire's life as her own. The worst part was how beautiful she looked in every photo, confident, successful, enviable. Everything Claire had been trying to become before pregnancy made her feel swollen and awkward and dependent. But now she understood. This wasn't about David choosing between two women he loved. This was about David choosing between his current life and a fantasy life where responsibility and commitment didn't exist, where unborn babies weren't complications to be eliminated. Claire looked at the clock. 3:45. David would be awake in 2 hours. She had to put the phone back exactly where she'd found it, delete her browser history, and pretend she knew nothing. But first, she had one more thing to do. She called her voicemail from David's hidden phone and left herself a message. This is David Morrison's other phone, the one his wife isn't supposed to know about. If something happens to Claire Morrison, if she has an accident or disappears or dies unexpectedly, check this phone. Check his messages with someone called V. Check Vanessa Sterling. They're planning to kill her and make it look accidental. They've already paid someone $200,000. It's supposed to happen tomorrow night when she drives home from dinner with her mother-in-law. Don't let them get away with it. She hung up and deleted the call from David's phone log. Then she put the phone back exactly where she'd found it, nestled among his keys on the kitchen counter. Claire climbed the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, one hand on her belly. In their bedroom, David slept peacefully, his face relaxed and innocent in the dim light from the hallway. The father of her child, the man who had promised to love and cherish her, the man who was planning to have her murdered in less than 24 hours. She stood beside their bed, watching him sleep, and realized she was looking at a stranger. 4 years of marriage, and she'd never known him at all. The baby kicked hard, making Claire wince. Even their daughter seemed to sense the danger surrounding them. "I know, sweetheart," Claire whispered, settling carefully into bed beside the man who wanted them both dead. "Mommy's going to figure this out." But as she lay in the darkness, unable to sleep, unable to stop her mind from racing, Claire wondered if she was already too late. Tomorrow night was only 18 hours away. 18 hours to figure out how to save herself and her baby from a plan that was already in motion. 18 hours to outsmart people who had been planning her death for months. 18 hours to survive. Claire barely made it through the school day. Every sound made her jump. Every phone call to the office made her wonder if it was news about an accident that hadn't happened yet. She found herself checking the clock constantly, calculating how many hours she had left. During lunch break, she locked her classroom door and researched everything she could find about Vanessa Sterling. The woman was impressive, Claire had to admit. Senior marketing executive at Morrison & Associates. The irony of the company name wasn't lost on her. Vanessa Sterling worked at a firm that shared David's last name, as if the universe was mocking Claire's soon-to-be existence. Vanessa had graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern, earned an MBA from Wharton, and won several industry awards for innovative marketing campaigns. Her LinkedIn profile read like a masterclass in professional success, but Claire dug deeper, looking for cracks in the perfect facade. She found Vanessa's college sorority photos, her marathon times, her charity involvement. Everything painted the picture of a woman who got what she wanted through determination, intelligence, and careful planning. The planning part made Claire's stomach twist. She found an article in Chicago Business Weekly featuring Vanessa in a piece about 30 under 30, young professionals to watch. The photo showed her in a sleek black dress, standing confidently in what looked like a corner office, the city skyline behind her. "Success isn't about luck," Vanessa was quoted as saying. "It's about identifying what you want and eliminating obstacles until you achieve it." Eliminating obstacles. Claire touched her pregnant belly. She was the obstacle. The article mentioned Vanessa's recent engagement to a successful real estate developer, but didn't name David. Claire wondered if Vanessa had already started telling people they were engaged. How long had she been planning to step into Claire's life? She found Vanessa's address through a professional directory. Lincoln Park. Naturally, one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods. A quick property search revealed that Vanessa owned a 2-bedroom condo worth close to $1 million. Claire thought about her own modest teacher's salary, their small house with a leaky roof and outdated kitchen. No wonder David was tempted by Vanessa's world of success and luxury. But it wasn't just the money, Claire realized as she studied more photos of Vanessa. The woman was beautiful in an effortless way that Claire had never been. Even pregnant, Claire had been plain wholesome, David used to say, as if that were a compliment. Vanessa was stunning in a way that turned heads and stopped conversations. At 3:30, instead of going home, Claire drove to Lincoln Park. She wasn't sure what she hoped to accomplish, but she needed to see where Vanessa lived. She needed to make this woman real instead of just a collection of threatening text messages and perfect photos. Vanessa's building was exactly what Claire expected. Modern, sleek, with a doorman and valet parking. Claire sat in her worn Honda Civic across the street, feeling invisible among the luxury cars and well-dressed pedestrians. At 4:45, Vanessa emerged from the building, Claire's breath caught. Photos hadn't prepared her for seeing David's mistress in person. Vanessa was tall, probably 5'8" even in flats, with honey blonde hair that moved like silk as she walked. She wore a camel-colored coat that probably cost more than Claire made in a month, and she moved with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting you belonged wherever you were. Claire watched Vanessa climb into a silver BMW and pull into traffic. Without thinking, Claire followed. The drive took 12 minutes. Vanessa parked in front of a small cafe in River North, the kind of place that served $15 salads and had a 2-week waiting list for dinner reservations. Claire parked half a block away and watched through her rearview mirror. Vanessa wasn't alone. A man approached her table, and Claire's blood froze. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair and a face that would have been handsome if not for the hardness around his eyes. He moved like someone comfortable with violence, alert and predatory. When he sat down across from Vanessa, Claire could see them talking intently. Vanessa pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. The man opened it, looked inside, and nodded. Then Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed him something on the screen. Claire's photo, her maternity photo from 2 weeks ago, the one David had insisted they take in the park near their house. The same photo David had on his desk at work, the one he'd sent to his mother to show off his beautiful pregnant wife. The man studied the photo for a long moment, then said something that made Vanessa laugh. Claire couldn't hear them from this distance, but she could read body language. This was business, cold, calculated business. The man was attractive in a dangerous way, Claire realized. The kind of man who probably made women feel safe right up until the moment they weren't. He looked like he could fix anything, solve any problem, eliminate any obstacle, including pregnant wives. Claire fumbled for her phone and tried to take photos of them together, but her hands shook too badly to get clear shots. She managed a few blurry images that might be useful as evidence if she survived long enough to need them. The meeting lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, the man kissed Vanessa's cheek with casual familiarity, and Claire realized this wasn't their first meeting. They knew each other. Maybe Vanessa had used his services before, for other obstacles that needed eliminating. After the man left, Vanessa sat alone at the table, sipping her coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked relaxed, satisfied, like someone who had just checked an important item off her to-do list. Claire started her car and drove home, her mind racing. She had seen David's mistress. She had seen the man who was supposed to kill her. The plan was real, the players were in place, and tonight was supposed to be her last night alive. At home. She deadbolted the door and set the alarm again. David's car wasn't in the driveway yet, which gave her time to think. She needed a plan, but every option seemed impossible. Call the police with what evidence? Text messages that could have been sent by anyone. Photos of 2 people having coffee. She could cancel dinner with Helen Morrison, but that would only delay things. If they wanted her dead, they would find another opportunity, another dark road, another accident waiting to happen. Her phone rang, making her jump. Helen Morrison's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Mrs. Morrison. Claire, dear, I wanted to confirm our dinner tonight. 7 o'clock at Romano's, as usual. Actually, I was thinking we might reschedule. I'm not feeling very well." There was a pause. "Nonsense. Fresh air and good food will do you good. Besides, I have something important to discuss with you about the baby's christening. David specifically asked me to talk to you about it tonight." David specifically asked. Claire's grip tightened on the phone. He had made sure she would be alone tonight, driving home on the dark stretch of highway between Romano's restaurant and their house. "I really think I should stay home." "Claire, I've already made the reservation. The weather is supposed to be terrible tonight, so I hope you'll drive carefully. You know how dangerous that road can be in the rain." The weather. Helen knew about the weather, about the dangerous road. Had David told his mother about the plan, or was she just an unwitting accomplice helping to set the stage? "Mrs. Morrison, has David said anything to you about our marriage, about our future together?" Another pause, longer this time. What an odd question. Why would you ask that? Just wondering if he seems happy, if he's excited about the baby. David is a complex man. Claire. He's always been ambitious, always looking toward the future rather than being satisfied with the present. But I'm sure he loves you very much. The careful phrasing made Claire wonder exactly how much Helen knew about her son's activities. But there was no point in pressing further. If Helen was involved, she wouldn't admit it. If she wasn't, Claire would just sound paranoid. "I'll see you at 7, Claire said finally. "Excellent. And Claire drives safely. I'd hate for anything to happen to you or my grandchild." After hanging up, Claire sat in her living room and tried to figure out her next move. She could run, but where she had no money of her own beyond her modest checking account, David controlled their savings, their investments, even the deed to their house. She could call her sister in Seattle, but that would mean admitting that her marriage was a lie and her husband wanted her dead. It would mean starting over with nothing but a baby due in 2 months, or she could go to dinner tonight and see what happened. Maybe she was wrong about everything. Maybe those text messages were coincidental. Maybe the meeting between Vanessa and the dangerous man was innocent. But even as she tried to convince herself, Claire knew she was rationalizing. Her instincts were screaming danger, and she'd learned to trust those instincts over the past few months of hanging up calls and mysterious cars. Her baby kicked hard, reminding Claire that she wasn't just making decisions for herself anymore. Whatever happened tonight, she had to protect her daughter. At 6 o'clock, David came home. He kissed her forehead and asked about her day, just like always. His performance was flawless, loving and attentive, and concerned about her dinner plans. "Are you sure you feel up to dinner with my mother? You look tired." "I'm fine," Claire lied. "Drive carefully tonight. The weather's supposed to get bad, and you know how that road gets in the rain." The road. Everyone kept mentioning the road, as if they were all reading from the same script. "Maybe I should take your car instead," Claire suggested. "It handles better in bad weather." David's expression flickered, just for a moment. "No, I need my car tonight. I might have to show a property if the Hendersons call back." Of course, his car probably had GPS tracking that would show exactly where he was when his wife had her tragic accident. An alibi built right into the plan. Claire went upstairs to get ready for dinner, choosing her clothes carefully. If tonight was her last night alive, she wanted to look beautiful. Not for David or Helen or even for herself, but for her daughter. If there were going to be photos in newspapers tomorrow, photos of the pregnant woman who died too young, Claire wanted people to see a mother who loved her child enough to die protecting her. She chose a black maternity dress that made her feel elegant despite her size, and the pearl necklace David had given her for their first anniversary. Before he started planning her murder, when she came downstairs, David was waiting by the door with her coat. "You look beautiful," he said, and for a moment, his voice sounded sincere. "Thank you." He helped her into the coat, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Claire, I want you to know that whatever happens, I love you and our baby very much. Whatever happens, not have a good time or drive safely, whatever happens." Claire looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the man she'd married, the man who had promised to love and protect her. But all she saw was a stranger wearing her husband's face. "I love you too," she whispered, and realized it was probably the last lie she would ever tell him. At 6:45, Claire got into her Honda Civic and backed out of the driveway. David stood in the doorway, watching her leave, his silhouette dark against the warm light of their home. As she drove toward Romano's restaurant, toward dinner with her mother-in-law, toward the dark road where someone was waiting to kill her, Claire kept checking her rearview mirror, not for cars following her this time, but for any sign of the life she was leaving behind. She was driving toward her own murder, and the only thing that kept her going was the baby moving inside her, reminding her that some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight seemed impossible to win. Michael Reynolds received the assignment on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered through the usual channels in the usual way. Cash payment up front, target photograph, timeline, and specific instructions about how the job should look when it was finished. Car accident, pregnant woman, late 20s, drives home alone on a dark road during bad weather. These things happened all the time. No one would question it, but as Mick studied the photograph of Claire Morrison, something nagged at him. She had kind eyes, the sort of woman who probably rescued stray cats and remembered her students' birthdays. not the usual type he was hired to eliminate. Most of his targets were criminals themselves, people who had crossed the wrong organizations or stolen from dangerous employers. Occasionally, he dealt with cheating spouses or business partners who knew too much. But pregnant elementary school teachers were outside his normal parameters. Still, business was business. Vanessa Sterling had paid him $200,000, half up front and half upon completion. That was enough money to disappear for a year, maybe two, enough to finally get out of this life and start fresh somewhere, warm and anonymous. He'd been watching Claire Morrison for 3 days now, learning her routines and mapping her schedule. She was remarkably predictable. School from 8 to 4, grocery shopping on Thursdays, doctor appointments on Tuesday mornings. She always drove the same route home, always stopped at the same red light, always parked in the same spot in her driveway. But watching her had made the job more complicated rather than easier. Yesterday, he'd observed her helping an elderly man load groceries into his car, refusing his offer of $5 for her trouble. This morning, he'd seen her slip a $20 bill to a homeless woman outside the coffee shop near her school. At lunch, she'd spent her free period tutoring a struggling student instead of eating. Claire Morrison was genuinely good, and Mick had spent enough time around genuinely bad people to recognize the difference. That was the problem with surveillance. The more you watched someone, the more human they became. Claire wasn't just a target anymore. She was a person who hummed while she drove and talked to her unborn baby in the grocery store checkout line. "Kick if you want the chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla," she'd said yesterday, standing in the frozen foods aisle with one hand on her belly. When the baby kicked, she'd laughed and switched her selection. Mick had been 3 feet away, pretending to study frozen pizzas, and the sound of her laugh had hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time he'd heard laughter that pure, that unconscious? He thought about the conversation he'd had with Vanessa Sterling when she first approached him. "She's making David's life complicated," Vanessa had explained over coffee at an expensive downtown cafe. "He wants out of the marriage, but she's pregnant and needy and dependent on him financially. A divorce would ruin him, and frankly, I'm not interested in dealing with his baggage." Vanessa was beautiful in a sharp, calculated way, with the kind of confidence that came from always getting what she wanted. But there was something cold about her, something that made Mick think of reptiles sunning themselves on rocks. "Why not just divorce her anyway?" he'd asked. "Because she'll take half of everything, plus child support for the next 18 years. David's business is just starting to take off. A messy divorce would destroy his financial future." Vanessa had stirred her latte with precise economical movements. "Besides, I'm not the sort of woman who shares. I want all of him, not the parts that are left over after he pays his obligations to someone else." Mick had done worse jobs for worse people, but usually the targets had earned their fate somehow. Claire Morrison's only crime seemed to be marrying the wrong man and getting pregnant at an inconvenient time. Now he sat in his rented sedan across from Romano's restaurant, watching Claire navigate the parking lot carefully. She moved slowly, one hand always protecting her belly, and took extra time getting out of her car. 7 months pregnant and still graceful, still beautiful in an understated way that Vanessa Sterling's expensive polish couldn't touch. His phone buzzed. Text from Vanessa. "Is everything in place for tonight?" Mick stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "Delayed. Weather conditions not optimal." It was a lie. The weather was perfect for what they had planned. Rain starting in an hour, just enough to make the roads slick and visibility poor. Accident investigators would find skid marks and assume Claire had lost control in the storm, but sitting here, watching a pregnant woman walk carefully toward what she didn't know was her last dinner, Mick found himself reluctant to proceed. He'd killed 19 people in 8 years of freelance work. Soldiers in Afghanistan before that, but those didn't count the same way. Every one of his civilian targets had been someone who chose to live in the gray areas where violence was an occupational hazard. Drug dealers, money launderers, human traffickers, corporate executives who stole pension funds. Claire Morrison taught 3rd grade and drove a Honda Civic with a car seat already installed in the back. Mick's phone buzzed again. "Timeline is critical. Client wants this finished tonight." The client, David Morrison, who was probably at home right now, establishing his alibi while his wife ate dinner with his mother. The man who had gotten Claire pregnant and then decided she was inconvenient. Who had promised to love and cherish her, then hired someone to kill her when love became complicated? Another text, 200,000, as agreed. Don't lose your nerve now. Mick thought about the money. Enough to disappear, to start over, to finally stop being the kind of man parents warned their children about. But to get it, he had to kill someone who probably sent thank you notes and baked cookies for her neighbors. He watched Claire through the restaurant window, sitting across from an older woman who looked like a female version of David Morrison. The mother-in-law was talking animatedly, gesturing with her fork, while Claire nodded politely and picked at her food. Did Helen Morrison know what was supposed to happen tonight? Was she keeping Claire at dinner until the optimal time, making sure she would be on that dark stretch of highway at exactly the right moment? Mick studied the older woman's face and decided she probably didn't know. Helen looked genuinely fond of Claire, reaching across the table to pat her hand, smiling when Claire showed her something on her phone. Probably ultrasound photos of the baby. The baby. Mick hadn't let himself think too much about that part of the job. 2 lives, not one. A woman and her unborn child, eliminated because they complicated someone else's plans. He'd been 11 when his own father walked out, leaving behind nothing but debt and empty promises. Mick's mother had worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. Never dating, never remarrying, never trusting another man with their fragile security. Some men aren't meant to be fathers, she'd told him once. The good ones know it and stay away. The bad ones stick around and make everyone miserable. David Morrison was apparently the third type, the kind who stuck around just long enough to make everyone dead. At 8:30, Claire and Helen Morrison finished their dinner. Mick watched Claire stand slowly, accepting help from the older woman, moving with the careful deliberation of someone carrying precious cargo. They hugged goodbye in the parking lot, and Mick could see Helen saying something that made Claire smile. The last smile of her life, if everything went according to plan. Claire climbed into her Honda Civic and pulled out of the parking lot, turning toward the highway that would take her home. Mick followed at a distance, his hands tight on the steering wheel. The plan was simple. 3 miles ahead, the highway curved through a wooded area with no streetlights and minimal traffic. He would ram her car from behind at just the right angle, sending her into the trees. The impact would kill her instantly, and the rain would wash away any evidence of a second vehicle. But as he followed Claire's taillights through the gathering darkness, Mick found himself slowing down instead of speeding up. His phone rang, and Vanessa Sterling's name appeared on the screen. "Answer it," he told himself. "Take the money and finish the job." Instead, he let it go to voicemail. Claire's car moved steadily ahead of him, her brake lights flashing occasionally as she navigated the curves. She was driving carefully, probably thinking about the baby, making sure they both got home safely, home to the husband who wanted them dead. Mick made a decision that surprised him. Instead of running Claire off the road, he pulled alongside her car and rolled down his window. "Pull over," he called out, waving his hand. "Emergency." Claire looked startled but began slowing down, probably thinking she had a flat tire or some other mechanical problem. She pulled onto the shoulder of the highway, and Mick parked behind her. His phone was ringing again. Vanessa, demanding updates, expecting confirmation that the job was done. Mick turned off his phone and walked toward Claire's car, knowing that everything in his life was about to change. Some choices couldn't be undone, and some lines, once crossed, redefined who you were forever. He'd spent 8 years being the kind of man who eliminated problems for money. Tonight, he was going to try being the kind of man who solved them instead. Claire pulled over on the dark highway, her heart hammering as the stranger approached her car. This was it, she realized. This was how it would happen. Not the car accident they'd planned, but something more direct, more personal. She kept her doors locked and her window cracked just an inch. "What's wrong?" she called out. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and intense eyes that seemed to see everything. He moved with controlled precision, like someone comfortable with violence. But when he spoke, his voice was unexpectedly gentle. "Mrs. Morrison, my name is Michael Reynolds. You're in danger. Your husband and Vanessa Sterling hired me to kill you tonight." Claire's breath stopped. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, the truth wasn't one of them. "I was supposed to run you off the road about 2 miles ahead," he continued. "Make it look like an accident in the rain, but I'm not going to do it. Why are you telling me this?" Her voice came out as a whisper, Because you don't deserve to die for marrying the wrong man. Claire stared at him through the narrow gap in her window. This was the dangerous man she'd seen with Vanessa at the cafe, the one who was supposed to eliminate obstacles. But instead of killing her, he was warning her. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I want you to go home, pack a bag, and disappear tonight. Take your baby and run as far as you can. Don't trust anyone, especially not your husband." "I can't just disappear. I have a job, a life." "You had a life. Now you have a choice: run or die." Claire's baby kicked hard, as if responding to the stress and fear coursing through her system. She pressed her hand to her belly protectively. "Why should I trust you? You're the one they hired to kill me." Michael Reynolds was quiet for a moment, rain beginning to spatter on his shoulders. "Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. And because that baby doesn't deserve to pay for her father's sins." Her, he'd said her. "How do you know it's a girl?" "Your husband mentioned it when he was explaining why the timeline was so important. Said he didn't want to wait until after the birth because it would be messier emotionally if he had to deal with an actual baby." The casual cruelty of David's words, filtered through this stranger's voice, hit Claire like a physical blow. Her husband had discussed their daughter's murder in terms of emotional convenience. "I need to get home," she said finally. "Don't go home. They'll be watching for you. When you don't show up dead, they'll know something went wrong. Then where am I supposed to go?" Michael Reynolds pulled out his phone and showed her a number. "Call me if you need help. I'm not the good guy in this story, Mrs. Morrison, but I'm not willing to kill innocent people for money anymore." He walked back to his car and drove away, leaving Claire alone on the dark highway with rain beginning to fall. She sat there for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. The man hired to kill her had saved her life instead. But now what if she went home? David would know the plan had failed. If she didn't go home, he would know that too. Either way, they would try again. And next time, they might not hire someone with a conscience. Claire pulled back onto the highway and drove toward home slowly, her mind racing. She needed proof of what David and Vanessa were planning. She needed evidence that would protect her and her baby permanently. And suddenly, she knew exactly how to get it. Instead of going straight home, Claire stopped at the 24-hour drugstore and bought a small digital recorder. Then she went home and parked in the driveway. Leaving the car running, David appeared at the front door immediately, his face a mask of concern and relief. "Thank God you're okay. When you didn't answer your phone, I started to worry about the weather." Claire got out of the car slowly, the recorder hidden in her coat pocket. "I'm fine. Dinner ran long." David helped her up the front steps, his hands gentle and solicitous. The perfect concerned husband. "How's my mother? Did she behave herself?" "She was lovely. We talked about the baby's christening." Inside, David helped her out of her coat and settled her on the couch with unusual attentiveness. He was nervous, Claire realized, expecting a phone call or a text message confirming that his wife was dead. "Are you hungry? Can I get you anything?" "Just some tea, please." While David was in the kitchen, Claire activated the digital recorder and slipped it between the couch cushions. Then she called out, "David, can you come here for a minute? I want to talk to you about something." He appeared with her tea, sitting on the edge of the coffee table so he could face her. "What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about our future, about what kind of life we want for our daughter." David's expression flickered almost imperceptibly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if something happened to me? What if I died in childbirth, or had an accident, or something unexpected? Would you be able to raise her alone?" "Claire, why are you talking about this?" "Because I love you both so much. I want to make sure you'd be okay without me." She reached for his hand, noting how his fingers tensed at her touch. "You'd remarry eventually, wouldn't you? Find someone who could help you raise our daughter. I don't want to think about losing you." "Acto, but if you did, you'd want someone who loved children, right? Someone who would be a good mother to her." David was quiet for a long moment. "I suppose so." "What about Vanessa? She seems lovely, very successful, very sophisticated. Do you think she'd be good with children?" The change in David's expression was subtle but unmistakable. Surprise, guilt, and something that might have been fear. "Why would you ask about Vanessa?" "I've heard you mention her a few times. Your colleague at Morrison & Associates. Right, I was just wondering if you think she'd be the sort of person who would want a ready-made family. Vanessa is very career-focused. I don't think she's interested in children. That's too bad. I was hoping she might be someone who could step in if I wasn't around anymore. You know, help with the baby, provide stability. David stood up abruptly. Claire, I really don't want to have this conversation. It's morbid and unnecessary. Is it because I've been having some strange thoughts lately? Dreams about accidents? About not being here for the baby's birth? Maybe it's just pregnancy anxiety. But what if it's something more? What if I'm being warned about something? You're being ridiculous. Am I because I found some text messages on a phone that isn't mine? Messages about jobs and payments and making things look accidental? David went very still. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a phone hidden in your keys. I'm talking about messages with someone called V. I'm talking about plans to make sure I never come home from dinner tonight. For a moment, David didn't respond. Then he laughed, but it sounded forced and hollow. Claire, you're exhausted and paranoid. Pregnancy hormones can cause all sorts of... Don't... Claire's voice was sharp enough to stop him mid-sentence. Don't tell me this is pregnancy hormones. Don't tell me I'm imagining things. I know what I saw. David stared at her for a long moment, and Claire could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much she knew and what his options were. Okay, he said finally. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing Vanessa. Yes, we've been making plans for a future together. But murder, Claire, you're talking about murder. That's insane. Is it because someone hired a man named Michael Reynolds to kill me tonight? $200,000 to make it look like a car accident. David's face went white. How do you know that name? Because he told me. He pulled me over on the highway and warned me instead of killing me. The silence stretched between them, thick with revelation and betrayal. David sank back onto the coffee table, his head in his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen this way, he said quietly. What way was it supposed to happen? David, you weren't supposed to find out. You were supposed to have an accident, and I was supposed to grieve, and eventually move on with my life. With Vanessa? Yes, with Vanessa. Someone who understands my ambitions, who wants the same things I want. Someone who doesn't need me to be someone I'm not. Claire felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart, but something deeper. The part of her that had believed in their marriage, in his love, in the life they'd built together. What about our daughter? David looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. Vanessa doesn't want children. The baby was a complication. So you decided to kill us both. I decided to solve a problem before it became unsolvable. The casual way he said it, as if their daughter's life was just another business decision, made Claire's vision blur with rage. Get out, she whispered. Claire, get out of this house. Now. Tonight. David stood slowly. Where am I supposed to go? To Vanessa? To your future? To whoever will have a man who tried to murder his pregnant wife? You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. Claire smiled for the first time in hours, thinking about the recorder hidden in the couch cushions. We'll see about that. After David left, Claire sat alone in their living room, one hand on her belly, listening to her daughter move restlessly inside her. The house felt different now, emptied of pretense and lies, but also emptied of the future she'd thought they were building together. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Are you safe? Michael Reynolds, the man who had saved her life. For now, she texted back. Stay that way. This isn't over. Claire looked around the home she'd shared with David for 4 years, at the baby furniture they'd chosen together, at the photos on the mantel showing happier times that now seemed like elaborate lies. He was right. This wasn't over. David and Vanessa would try again, and next time they might not hire someone with a conscience. But Claire was no longer the naive, trusting woman who had driven to dinner tonight. She was a mother now, protecting her child, and that changed everything. She was going to fight back, and she was going to win. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat in the nursery, surrounded by tiny clothes and soft toys, trying to figure out how to keep her daughter safe from the people who wanted them both dead. At 3 a.m, her phone rang. Michael Reynolds. Mrs. Morrison, are you all right? I told David I knew about the plan. He admitted everything and left. There was a long pause. That was dangerous. Now they know their first plan failed. I recorded the conversation. I have evidence. Evidence won't stop a bullet or a car bomb or poison in your coffee. These people have money and connections. They'll find another way. Claire pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the baby shift restlessly. Even in the womb, her daughter seemed to sense the danger surrounding them. What am I supposed to do, run away and hide for the rest of my life? If that's what it takes to stay alive, yes. I'm 7 months pregnant. I can't just disappear. I need medical care, a safe place to deliver, people I can trust. Then we need to make sure they can't hurt you again. As if this stranger, this killer who had chosen mercy over money, was now her ally in survival. Why are you helping me? Claire asked. Because everyone deserves a chance to watch their child grow up. Because your husband is a coward who should have divorced you honestly instead of hiring someone to kill you. Because Vanessa Sterling is the kind of person who treats human lives like line items on a budget. His voice carried an edge of personal anger that made Claire curious about his past. But this wasn't the time for biography. What do you suggest? First, you need to get out of that house. They know where you live, and they'll be watching. Second, you need help from people they can't intimidate or buy. Third, you need leverage that makes you more valuable alive than dead. I don't have people like that. I'm an elementary school teacher with a modest savings account and no powerful friends. Everyone has someone. Think about it. Who in your life has influence, money, or information that could protect you? Claire thought about her small circle of relationships. Her sister in Seattle was a social worker with no connections to Chicago's power structure. Her parents were retired and living on a fixed income. Most of her friends were teachers or stay-at-home mothers with their own young families to worry about. But there was one person who might help. My friend Sarah Matthews is a nurse at Northwestern Memorial. She knows doctors, administrators, people with influence in the medical community. That's a start. Anyone else? Claire hesitated. David's mother, Helen. She doesn't know about Vanessa or the murder plot, but she's got money and social connections. She might help if she knew the truth. Be careful with family. Blood loyalty runs deep, and she might choose her son over you. She chose me over him once before. When we first got married, David wanted to elope and skip the big wedding. Helen insisted we do it properly because she said I deserved better than his first instinct, which was always to take shortcuts. Claire remembered that conversation, how Helen had pulled her aside and said, "My son is brilliant and ambitious, but he doesn't always think about other people's feelings. Don't let him shortchange you on the important things." Maybe Helen had been warning her about more than wedding planning. Where are you right now? Michael asked. At home, in the nursery. You need to leave. Pack a bag with essentials and go somewhere public, somewhere with security cameras and witnesses. Don't go alone to isolated places. Where am I supposed to go at 3 in the morning? 24-hour diner, hospital waiting room, all-night grocery store. Somewhere safe until you can contact your friend Sarah in the morning? Claire looked around the nursery one more time, at the crib she'd assembled with David, at the mobile they'd chosen together, at the rocking chair where she'd planned to nurse their daughter. Leaving felt like admitting defeat, like letting David and Vanessa win, but staying felt like signing her own death warrant. Will you help me figure out what to do next? She asked. Yes, but Mrs. Morrison, you need to understand something. I'm not a good man. I've killed people for money, and I've done things that would horrify you. The only reason I'm helping you is because you and your baby don't deserve to die for someone else's convenience. What's your real name? Michael Reynolds is real enough. Mick, if you want to be informal. Mick, why did you become someone who kills people for money? There was a long pause, because I was good at it, and it paid well, and I convinced myself that the people I eliminated were bad enough to deserve it, until tonight, when I realized that deserving it was just something I told myself to sleep better. Claire gathered her courage to ask the question that mattered most. How do I know you won't change your mind again? How do I know you won't decide that $200,000 is worth more than my life? Because I already gave the money back. What? I transferred Vanessa Sterling's payment back to her account an hour ago, minus my expenses, along with a message that the contract is terminated and any attempt to hire someone else will result in full disclosure to law enforcement? Claire felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear she'd been carrying since this nightmare began. You gave back $200,000 to protect someone you don't even know. I gave back $200,000 because it was blood money, and I'm tired of having blood on my hands. 20 minutes later, Claire sat in the parking lot of a 24-hour Walmart, her hastily packed bag in the back seat, trying to call Sarah Matthews. It went to voicemail. Sarah, it's Claire. I know it's late, but I need your help. Something terrible has happened, and I need somewhere safe to stay. Please call me back as soon as you get this. Her phone rang immediately. Sarah's voice was groggy but alert. Claire, what's wrong? Are you okay? Is the baby okay? The baby's fine, but I'm not. David hired someone to kill me tonight. I'm in a Walmart parking lot at 3:30 in the morning because I'm afraid to go home. Jesus Christ, I'll be right there. Which Walmart? The one on Western Avenue. Sarah, there's more. David's been having an affair for 8 months, and his mistress was part of the murder plot. I have evidence, but I don't know if it's enough to protect us. Stay in your car, keep the doors locked, and wait for me. I'm leaving now. While she waited, Claire called Helen Morrison. The phone rang 6 times before a sleepy voice answered. Claire, what time is it? Is everything all right? Mrs. I. Morrison, I need to tell you something about David, about what he's been doing. At 4 in the morning, he hired someone to kill me tonight. He's been having an affair with a woman named Vanessa Sterling, and they wanted me dead so they could be together without the complication of a wife and baby. Silence. Then, that's impossible. David would never. I have recordings. Mrs. and Morrison. I have proof. And I have a 7-month-old baby who deserves to live long enough to be born. More silence. Longer this time. When Helen spoke again, her voice was different. Older. Sadder. But also angry. Where are you? I'm safe for now, but I need help. I need people who can protect me from your son and his girlfriend. Come to my house now. We'll figure this out together. Mrs. Morrison, are you sure he's your son? He's my son who tried to kill his pregnant wife. That's not the boy I raised, and it's not the man I'm going to protect. Helen Morrison's house sat on 2 acres in Lake Forest, surrounded by tall trees and electronic security gates. Claire had always felt intimidated by its size and elegance, but tonight it felt like a fortress. Helen met her at the door in a robe and slippers, her gray hair disheveled but her eyes sharp and alert. She pulled Claire into a fierce hug that lasted longer than any embrace they'd shared before. I'm so sorry, Helen whispered. I should have seen the signs. I should have protected you better. You couldn't have known. Couldn't I? David's father was charming and manipulative too. I thought I'd raised David differently, but maybe some things are inherited. They sat in Helen's living room, and Claire played the recordings she'd made of David's confession. Helen's face grew paler with each revelation, her hands clenched in her lap. When it was over, Helen was quiet for a long time. I'll call my lawyer in the morning, she said finally, and my financial advisor, and some other people who owe me favors. We're going to make sure you and that baby are protected, legally and financially. Why would you do that for me? I'm not even your daughter-in-law anymore. You're carrying my grandchild, and you're a good person who didn't deserve any of this. Helen's voice was firm, resolved. Besides, I have more money than I can spend in my lifetime. I might as well use it for something important. Claire felt tears she'd been holding back all night finally spill over. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't alone. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. At Walmart. Where are you? I found somewhere safe, Claire texted back. I'll call you in the morning and explain everything. Another text, this one from Mick. Are you secure for the night? Yeses, thank you. Don't trust anyone completely except the people who've already proven themselves. This is far from over. As if to prove his point, Claire's phone rang. David's number. Don't answer it, Helen said. But Claire wanted to hear his voice, to understand what he was thinking now that his carefully planned murder had failed. She answered the call and put it on speaker. Claire, where are you? I came back to the house to apologize and you're gone. I'm somewhere safe from people who want to kill me. No one wants to kill you. You're being paranoid and dramatic. David, I have a recording of you confessing to hiring Michael Reynolds to murder me. Your denials are pointless now." There was a pause. "That recording won't hold up in court. It was made without my consent. Maybe not in court, but it'll hold up in the court of public opinion. And with your mother, who's sitting right here listening to you try to gaslight me even now." "My mother, Claire. You dragged my mother into this." Helen took the phone from Claire's hand. "Hello, David. Yes, your wife dragged me into this by telling me that my son hired an assassin to kill her and my grandchild. Would you like to explain yourself?" "Mother, you don't understand the situation." "Then explain it to me. Explain how a woman who bakes cookies for her students and volunteers at the animal shelter deserves to die because she inconveniences your love life." "It's not that simple." "It sounds exactly that simple. You fell in love with someone else, and instead of asking for a divorce like a decent human being, you decided murder was easier. She's brilliant and successful and ambitious. She understands what I'm trying to build. And Claire doesn't. Claire wants me to be someone I'm not. She wants a husband who comes home for dinner every night and coaches Little League and puts family before everything else. That's not who I am." "Then you should have figured that out before you married her and got her pregnant." Helen's voice was ice cold. "You don't get to kill someone because you made promises you didn't want to keep." "I never meant for it to go this far." Vanessa just kept pushing, kept saying that Claire would ruin everything, that the baby would trap me forever. So this was Vanessa's idea. Not exactly, but she made it clear that she wouldn't wait around while I paid child support and split custody and tried to co-parent with my ex-wife. Helen looked at Claire with an expression that mixed sympathy with determination. "David, you have 24 hours to turn yourself into the police and confess everything. If you don't, I will. You would send your own son to prison. I would send my son to prison to save my daughter-in-law and grandchild from being murdered." "Yes." David hung up without another word. Helen set the phone down and turned to Claire. "You'll stay here until the baby is born. Longer, if you want. I have excellent security, and I know people who can make sure you're protected. I can't ask you to choose between your son and me. You're not asking, I'm choosing, and I'm choosing the people who deserve to live." Outside, dawn was beginning to break over Lake Forest, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. Claire sat in Helen Morrison's living room, surrounded by luxury she'd never experienced, protected by a woman who had every reason to reject her, but had chosen loyalty instead. For the first time in months, she felt safe, but Mick was right. This was far from over. Sarah Matthews arrived at Helen Morrison's house at 8 in the morning, carrying coffee and the kind of practical determination that made her excellent at handling medical emergencies. "Show me everything," she said after Helen let her in and performed brief introductions. Claire played the recordings, showed the photographs of text messages, and explained about Michael Reynolds and the failed murder attempt. Sarah listened without interrupting, her nurse's training evident in how she absorbed information calmly and organized it mentally. "We need to document everything medical," Sarah said when Claire finished. "Any signs of stress, any impact on the pregnancy, any evidence that this situation has affected your health or the baby's health." "Why? Because if this goes to court, we want a record showing that David's actions endangered not just your life, but your child's life through stress and trauma. That makes it attempted murder of a pregnant woman and her unborn child, which carries heavier penalties." Helen nodded approvingly. "Sarah's right. We need to think like prosecutors and build the strongest possible case." Over the next few hours, they systematically built a fortress of evidence around Claire. Sarah called her contacts at Northwestern Memorial to arrange for immediate prenatal care under a false name, ensuring Claire's medical records would be protected from anyone trying to track her. Helen called her lawyer, her financial advisor, and what she described as some people who know how to handle delicate situations. But it was Sarah who uncovered the information that changed everything. "I did some research on Vanessa Sterling," she announced during lunch. "She's not just a marketing executive. Her family owns Sterling Development, one of the largest real estate investment firms in the Midwest. They specialize in commercial properties and luxury residential projects." "So she has money," Claire said. "We already knew that. It's more than money. Sterling Development has been trying to acquire the land where David's biggest project is located, the Riverside Commons development, the one he's been working on for 2 years. Claire remembered Riverside Commons. David had talked about it constantly, describing it as the project that would establish his reputation and set them up financially for life. High-end condominiums with lake views, marketed to young professionals and empty nesters looking for luxury living. What does Vanessa's family want with David's land? They want to build a shopping complex, high-end retail, restaurants, entertainment venues, worth about $50 million if they can get the right zoning approvals. But David already has zoning approval for residential. Right. So Sterling Development needs someone with insider knowledge of the approval process, someone who can get the zoning changed from residential to commercial. Helen set down her coffee cup with a sharp click. They needed David's expertise and his connections with the City Planning Commission. Exactly. And they needed him available for a long-term consulting contract, not distracted by a wife and baby. Claire felt the pieces clicking into place. This was never just about David falling in love with someone else. This was business. I think Vanessa targeted him specifically, Sarah continued. Started the affair to get close to him, learned about his financial pressures and his project timeline, then offered him a way out of his marriage that would also give her family what they wanted. That's why the timeline was so critical, Claire realized. They needed David free to work with them immediately, before someone else bid on the commercial development rights. Helen pulled out her phone. I'm calling my friend Margaret Chen. She's on the City Planning Commission. The conversation lasted 10 minutes, with Helen taking careful notes. When she hung up, her expression was grim. Margaret says David submitted an application 3 weeks ago to change the zoning on Riverside Commons from residential to commercial. He claimed the residential market had shifted and he wanted to pivot to retail development. 3 weeks ago, Claire repeated, right around the time those threatening text messages started. Margaret also said David listed Sterling Development as his consulting partner on the new application. They're planning to split the profits from commercial development. How much money are we talking about? Sarah asked. Margaret estimates the commercial project could generate $15 to $20 million in profit for David's firm, plus a long-term consulting contract worth several million more. Claire pressed her hands to her belly, feeling her daughter move restlessly. So Vanessa seduced David, convinced him to kill me, and offered him millions of dollars to help her family steal his project. And he said yes to all of it. It appears that way. What kind of person does that? What kind of man agrees to murder his pregnant wife for money? Helen reached across the table and squeezed Claire's hand. The kind of man I failed to raise properly. The kind of man who thinks everything is for sale, including people's lives. Claire's phone rang. Unknown number, but she recognized the area code. She answered cautiously. Mrs. Morrison, this is Detective James Walker with the Chicago Police Department. I understand you may have information about a conspiracy to commit murder. Claire looked at Helen and Sarah, both of whom nodded encouragingly. Yes, a detective. I have recordings and evidence that my husband hired someone to kill me. I'd like to meet with you today to discuss the situation. Can you come to the station? Or would you prefer I come to you? Claire hesitated. How did you get my number? How did you know to call me? We received an anonymous tip this morning with your contact information and some very serious allegations. The tipster said you had evidence of a murder-for-hire plot. Claire looked at Helen and Sarah questioningly. Neither of them had contacted the police yet. Detective Walker, I'm going to need to verify your identity before I agree to meet with you. Can you give me your badge number and direct phone line at the station? Of course. My badge number is 4739, and you can reach me at the Area North Detective Division. 773-555-0123. Claire wrote down the numbers. I'll call you back within an hour. After she hung up, Sarah immediately looked up the Chicago Police Department online and called the number Detective Walker had provided. Detective Walker, please. Yes, I'll hold. She waited, then nodded to Claire. He's legitimate. Badge number matches, and he's expecting your call. But who tipped him off? Claire wondered aloud. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mick. Police contact is safe. Detective Walker specializes in conspiracy cases and can't be bought. I provided initial information to get investigation started. Claire showed the text to the others. Your mysterious guardian angel is being thorough, Helen observed, though I have to wonder about his motives. Maybe he just wants to make sure David and Vanessa can't try this again with someone else. Sarah suggested. Claire called Detective Walker back and arranged to meet him at Helen's house in 2 hours. Helen's security system and isolated location would provide privacy for the sensitive conversation. While they waited, Sarah continued her research into the Sterling family business dealings. "I found something interesting," she announced. "This isn't the first time Sterling Development has been involved in a suspicious situation. 5 years ago, they tried to acquire land for a hotel project in Milwaukee. The owner refused to sell, and 6 months later he died in what appeared to be a boating accident." "Appeared to be," Helen asked. "The Coast Guard investigation found some irregularities, but they couldn't prove foul play. The man's widow sold the land to Sterling Development 3 months later for half what they'd originally offered." Claire felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn weather. "You think they've done this before?" "I think the Sterling family has a pattern of getting what they want, regardless of who gets hurt in the process." Detective Walker arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. A tall man in his early 40s with graying hair and the kind of steady presence that suggested he'd seen everything and wasn't easily shocked. He listened to Claire's story without interrupting, taking detailed notes and asking for clarification on timeline and specifics. "Play the recording," he said when she finished. David's voice filled Helen's elegant living room, casually admitting to conspiracy to commit murder, discussing their daughter's life in terms of business complications. "This is admissible," Detective Walker said when it ended. "Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings. You were legally entitled to record conversations you participated in." "What about the text messages from David's hidden phone?" "Those are trickier. Taking someone else's phone without permission could be considered theft or invasion of privacy. But given the circumstances and the content of the messages, a prosecutor might argue that you were acting in self-defense when you discovered evidence of a plot against your life." Detective Walker studied his notes. "Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask you directly, do you want to press charges against your husband and Vanessa Sterling?" "I want them stopped. I want to make sure they can't hurt me or my baby, or anyone else." "Then we need to move quickly. If they suspect you're talking to police, they might try to flee or destroy evidence." "What do you need from me?" "Everything. All the recordings, all the photographs, all the documentation you've gathered. And I need you to be prepared to testify in court about what happened." Claire looked at Helen and Sarah, both of whom nodded encouragingly. "Okay, yes, I'll do whatever it takes." Detective Walker spent another hour gathering evidence and contact information. As he prepared to leave, he turned to Claire with a serious expression. "Mrs. Morrison, I need you to understand something. Once we arrest your husband and Miss Sterling, this becomes a public case. Your name will be in the newspapers. People will know that you were the target of a murder plot. That kind of publicity can attract unwanted attention from other dangerous people." "What kind of attention?" "Copycats, people who think you might be vulnerable, criminals who assume you have something valuable if someone was willing to pay to kill you for it. You'll need to be very careful about your security for a long time." After Detective Walker left, Claire sat in Helen's living room feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd set in motion. In a few hours, police would arrest David and Vanessa. Her private nightmare would become public knowledge. "Are you sure about this?" Helen asked gently. "I'm sure I don't want them to kill the next person who gets in their way." Her phone rang. David's number again. "Don't answer it," Sarah advised, but Claire picked up anyway, putting it on speaker so Helen and Sarah could hear. "Claire, we need to talk." "We already talked. David, you confessed to trying to have me murdered. There's nothing left to say. I made some mistakes, but we can work this out. We can go to counseling. Start over. Raise our daughter together." "Your daughter, David, you said she was a complication. You said it would be emotionally easier if you didn't have to deal with an actual baby." "I was angry and scared and saying things I didn't mean." "Which part didn't you mean, hiring the killer or planning to profit from my death?" There was a pause. "How did you find out about Sterling Development?" So he wasn't even going to deny it. "Does it matter?" "Claire, you don't understand the whole situation. Vanessa's family has connections that could destroy us both if we don't handle this carefully." "Us both, David. There is no us anymore. There hasn't been since you decided I was worth less than a real estate deal. Don't do anything stupid, or Claire, don't involve people who can't protect you from the Sterling family." The line went dead. Claire looked at Helen and Sarah, both of whom appeared troubled by David's final warning. "Maybe Detective Walker is right about the danger," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe," Claire agreed. "But I'd rather face unknown dangers as a free woman than certain death as a murder victim." Her phone buzzed with another text from Mick. "Police will make arrests tonight. Stay somewhere secure until tomorrow. Sterling family will be angry and might act impulsively." Claire forwarded the message to Detective Walker, then settled back into Helen's comfortable couch. Outside, darkness was falling over Lake Forest, and somewhere in the city, police were preparing to arrest the people who had planned her death. Tomorrow, she would wake up as a woman whose husband was in jail for conspiracy to commit murder. Tomorrow, she would begin building a new life for herself and her daughter, free from the man who had promised to love and protect them both. Tonight, for the first time in months, she felt safe, but as David's warning echoed in her mind, Claire wondered if safety was just another illusion she was clinging to, while the real danger gathered strength in the shadows. Claire woke up in Helen Morrison's guest bedroom to the sound of her phone ringing. Detective Walker's name appeared on the screen. "Mrs. Morrison, I have news. We arrested David Morrison and Vanessa Sterling at 11:45 last night. Both are being held without bail on charges of conspiracy to commit murder." Claire sat up carefully, one hand automatically going to her belly. "They're in jail." "Yes, David was arrested at Vanessa's apartment in Lincoln Park. Vanessa was arrested when she returned from what appears to have been an attempt to destroy evidence. We found burned documents in her fireplace and a hard drive that had been wiped. So they knew you were coming. Someone tipped them off, but not in time to escape. We also recovered 2 additional phones from Vanessa's apartment with messages that corroborate your evidence." Claire felt a weight she'd been carrying for days finally lift from her shoulders. "What happens now? Now we build the strongest possible case. And Mrs. Morrison, there's something else you should know. We contacted Michael Reynolds last night." Claire's breath caught. "Is he in trouble for helping me?" "Quite the opposite. He's agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation in exchange for immunity. His testimony about the original murder plot will be crucial for prosecution." After ending the call, Claire found Helen and Sarah having breakfast in the kitchen. She shared the news about the arrests, and for the first time in days, all 3 women smiled simultaneously. "I feel like I should be more relieved," Claire said, accepting a cup of tea from Helen. "But I keep thinking about what David said about the Sterling family having dangerous connections. Which is why we're not stopping here," Helen announced. "I've been making some calls this morning." "What kind of calls?" "The kind that wealthy widows with extensive social networks and substantial charitable contributions can make when they're properly motivated." Helen's smile was sharp and satisfied. "I've arranged meetings with some people who can make sure you and the baby are protected long-term." The first meeting was with Margaret Chen from the City Planning Commission, who arrived at Helen's house at 10 o'clock with a briefcase full of documents. "The zoning change application David submitted is fraudulent," Margaret announced without preamble. "He claimed to have unanimous support from property owners in the affected area, but I've contacted several of them this morning. None of them signed the petitions he submitted." "He forged signatures?" Sarah asked. "Apparently, and the environmental impact study he included was plagiarized from a similar project in Milwaukee. The same project where that man died in the suspicious boating accident." Claire felt her baby kick hard, as if responding to the stress and anger coursing through her system. How many laws did they break? Fraud, forgery, bribery of public officials, conspiracy, attempted murder, and probably several others we haven't discovered yet, Margaret replied. "But here's the important part. I'm recommending that the city launch a full investigation into all Sterling development projects over the past 10 years. If they've been using these tactics elsewhere, we'll find the evidence." The second meeting was with Helen's financial advisor, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Wells who specialized in protecting assets from legal challenges and family disputes. "I've established a trust fund for your daughter," Patricia explained to Claire. "Helen is the primary contributor, but she's structured it so that neither David nor the Sterling family can touch the money, even if they somehow win civil lawsuits or make claims against you." "How much money are we talking about?" Claire asked hesitantly. Helen answered, "Enough to ensure that you and your daughter never have to worry about financial security. Enough to pay for the best schools, medical care, legal protection, whatever you need. Mrs. Morrison, I can't accept that kind of generosity. Yes, you can, and you will, because that money represents my grandson's future, and I'll be damned if David's mistakes cost her the life she deserves. The third meeting was the most unusual. At 2 o'clock, a woman named Linda Hayes arrived at the house. She was about 50, professionally dressed, with the kind of neutral appearance that would make her invisible in most crowds. Linda provides personal security services for high-profile individuals, Helen explained. She's going to make sure you stay safe during the trial and afterward. I'm not high-profile, Claire protested. You are now, Linda replied matter-of-factly. Your case is going to attract media attention, and media attention attracts all kinds of people. Some of them will be sympathetic, but others will be dangerous. Linda spent an hour explaining security protocols, varying daily routines, checking cars for tracking devices, being aware of surroundings, recognizing surveillance, emergency procedures for different types of threats. The Sterling family has connections to some unsavory people, Linda continued. Vanessa's arrest will cost them millions in lost development deals. They might decide you're worth eliminating even from prison. From prison, money can reach anywhere, Mrs. Morrison, but so can protection if you have the right people on your side. At 4 o'clock, Mick called Claire's phone. I wanted to update you on the investigation, he said. I've provided police with detailed information about Vanessa's contact network, including other contractors she's used for similar jobs. There are others, 3 that I know of personally. All of them have worked for the Sterling family at various times over the past 5 years. Doing what? Eliminating obstacles to business deals. A property owner who wouldn't sell in Milwaukee, a city councilman in Detroit who opposed a zoning change, a lawyer in Indianapolis who was investigating Sterling Development's tax filings. Claire felt sick. How many people have they killed? At least 5 that I can prove. Probably more. And you worked for them. I worked for Vanessa specifically, and only on the job involving you. But I've worked with the other contractors on different projects for different clients. It's a small community, and word gets around about who's reliable. Why are you telling me this? Because when this goes to trial, you need to understand what you're up against. The Sterling family isn't just wealthy and connected. They're organized criminals who've been using murder to advance business interests for years. That evening, Helen, Sarah, and Claire sat in the living room planning for the challenges ahead. Claire's due date was 7 weeks away, and the trial wouldn't begin for at least 3 months. You'll stay here until after the baby is born, Helen said firmly. My security system is better than most government buildings, and Linda's people will provide additional protection. What about my job, my students? Sarah had already researched this. Medical leave for high-risk pregnancy due to stress and trauma. Your principal was very understanding when I explained the situation. Your job will be waiting when you're ready to return. If I'm alive to return, you will be, Helen said with absolute certainty. Because we're going to make sure of it. Claire's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Walker. Press conference tomorrow at 10 a.m. announcing arrests. Media will want to interview you. Recommend you decline all requests until after trial. Another text, this one from an unknown number. We know where you are. This isn't over. Claire showed the message to Helen and Sarah. Forward that to Detective Walker immediately, Helen instructed. And Linda, this is exactly the kind of threat she warned us about. Within minutes, both Detective Walker and Linda Hayes had responded. Additional security would be in place by morning, and the threatening message would be used as evidence of ongoing criminal activity. Are you scared? Sarah asked Claire as they prepared for bed. Terrified, Claire admitted. But I'm more angry than scared. They killed innocent people for money. They tried to kill my baby for a real estate deal. Someone has to stop them. And that someone is you. That someone is all of us. You, me, Helen, Detective Walker, Mick, everyone who's choosing to stand up to them instead of looking the other way. That night, Claire lay in the guest bedroom listening to her daughter move restlessly inside her. In 7 weeks, she would hold her baby for the first time. She would look into her daughter's eyes and promise to always protect her from people like David and Vanessa Sterling. But first, she had to survive long enough to keep that promise. Outside, and security lights illuminated Helen's property, and trained professionals monitored every entrance and exit. Inside, three women who had started as strangers were becoming family, bound together by their determination to protect an unborn child from people who saw murder as just another business expense. Claire pressed her hand to her belly and whispered to her daughter, "We're going to be okay, sweetheart. We have good people on our side now." For the first time since this nightmare began, she actually believed it might be true. The press conference made national news. Claire watched from Helen's living room as Detective Walker stood behind a podium surrounded by microphones and cameras, announcing the arrests of David Morrison and Vanessa Sterling for conspiracy to commit murder. This case represents one of the most calculated and cold-blooded murder plots we've encountered, Detective Walker told the assembled reporters. The defendants hired a professional killer to eliminate a pregnant woman because her existence interfered with their business and personal plans. The questions came fast and sharp. Detective Walker, can you confirm that the intended victim was the defendant's own wife? Was this connected to the Sterling Development Company? How far along in her pregnancy was the intended victim? Are there other victims connected to this conspiracy? Detective Walker answered carefully, revealing enough information to satisfy public interest while protecting details that might compromise the prosecution. But Claire could see that the story was already taking on a life of its own. Her phone started ringing within minutes of the press conference ending. Reporters, producers from news shows, publishers who wanted to buy her story. She turned off the phone and handed it to Helen. "I can't deal with this right now." "You don't have to," Helen assured her. "Linda's people will screen all communications. You don't talk to anyone until this trial is over." But the media attention brought unexpected consequences. At noon, Helen's housekeeper answered the door to find a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of flowers. "For Mrs. Claire Morrison," he said, "congratulations on your survival." Linda Hayes, who had been working in Helen's home office, immediately confiscated the flowers and called the police. The bouquet contained a small recording device and a note. "We're watching you. We know you're pregnant. Accidents can happen to pregnant women anywhere, anytime. Pack a bag," Linda ordered Claire. "We're moving you to a secure location immediately." "Where? Somewhere the Sterling family and their associates can't find you?" The secure location turned out to be a private medical facility in Wisconsin, 2 hours from Chicago. It looked like an exclusive resort from the outside, but Claire quickly realized it was essentially a fortress designed to protect high-risk patients and witnesses. Dr. Emily Chen, a specialist in high-risk pregnancies, examined Claire thoroughly and declared both mother and baby healthy, despite the stress of recent events. "Your blood pressure is elevated, which is understandable given the circumstances," Dr. Chen explained. "We'll monitor you closely and make sure you have everything you need for a safe delivery." "How long will I have to stay here?" "Until the trial is over, or until the baby is born, whichever comes first. We have excellent facilities here for both prenatal care and delivery." Sarah had taken leave from her job at Northwestern Memorial to stay with Claire. Helen visited daily, always accompanied by Linda Hayes and additional security personnel. The isolation was protective but also suffocating. 2 weeks after the arrests, Detective Walker brought disturbing news. "We've uncovered evidence linking the Sterling family to 7 suspicious deaths over the past 6 years, he reported during a secure video call. All of them were people who opposed Sterling development projects in various cities. 7 people. Claire felt her baby kick hard, as if responding to her distress. Property owners, city officials, lawyers, environmental activists, a journalist who was investigating their tax practices, all died in accidents that appeared natural at the time, but show patterns consistent with professional elimination. What does this mean for the case against David and Vanessa? It means they're part of a much larger criminal organization than we initially realized. It also means the Sterling family has more resources and motivation to silence you than we first understood. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She stood by the window of her secure room, looking out at the Wisconsin countryside, thinking about 7 people who had died because they got in the Sterling family's way. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she recognized: Mick. "How did you get through the security screening?" she asked. "I have my ways. Are you all right?" "I'm safe. Scared, but safe." "Good. I wanted you to know that I've been working with Detective Walker to identify all the people involved in the Sterling operation. We've got enough evidence to bring down the entire organization. How many people are we talking about? At least 12 in Chicago, plus associates in Milwaukee, Detroit, and Indianapolis. They've been running a multi-state criminal enterprise using murder to advance business interests. And I'm the only witness who's still alive to testify about it. You're the witness who can connect Vanessa Sterling directly to conspiracy to commit murder. The other cases are harder to prove because the witnesses are dead. Claire pressed her hand to her belly, feeling her daughter move restlessly. Mick, what made you change your mind about killing me, really? There was a long pause. I watched you for 3 days before I was supposed to eliminate you. You helped an old man with his groceries. You gave money to a homeless woman. You talked to your unborn baby in the store, telling her about the world she was going to see. That's it. That's everything. You were genuinely good, and I realized I'd spent so many years around genuinely bad people that I'd forgotten the difference. Killing you would have made me exactly like David and Vanessa, someone who destroys innocent lives for money. What will you do when this is over? Disappear, probably. Start over somewhere? Maybe try to be the kind of person who helps people instead of hurting them. After the call ended, Claire lay in her hospital bed thinking about second chances and the strange ways that good and evil intersected in people's lives. Mick had been a killer who chose mercy. David had been a husband who chose murder. Vanessa had been successful and beautiful and completely without conscience. Her daughter kicked again, and Claire realized she was already teaching her child the most important lesson of all, that who you choose to be matters more than what circumstances make you. 3 days later, Linda Hayes brought news that changed everything. Vanessa Sterling was found dead in her jail cell this morning, she announced during the daily security briefing. Claire's blood went cold. How? Apparent suicide. She hanged herself with a bedsheet. Do you believe it was suicide? Linda's expression was grim. No, I think the Sterling family decided she knew too much and might make a deal with prosecutors to reduce her sentence. What about David? He's been moved to protective custody. We think he might be next. That afternoon, Detective Walker called with an urgent update. David Morrison wants to make a deal, he announced. He's offering to testify against the entire Sterling organization in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of reduced sentence? 20 years instead of life without parole? He claims to have evidence that could convict everyone involved in the Sterling operation, including several murders we haven't been able to solve. Claire thought about this for several minutes. 20 years meant David would be free when their daughter was in college. It meant he might try to contact her, might try to be part of her life. What do you recommend, Detective? I recommend we take the deal. Without Vanessa's testimony, we need David's evidence to convict the people who've been killing witnesses. If we don't stop them now, they'll keep murdering people to protect their business interests. And if I refuse the deal, then David probably gets life in prison, but the Sterling organization continues operating, and you remain a target for the rest of your life. Claire looked around the secure facility that had been her home for 2 weeks. At the armed guards, the bulletproof windows, the constant security protocols that governed her daily life. I'll accept the deal, she said finally, but I have conditions. What conditions? David serves the full 20 years, no parole, no early release. He has no contact with me or our daughter until she turns 18 and can decide for herself whether she wants to know him. And he testifies to everything. Every murder, every crime, every detail of the Sterling operation. I'll present your terms to the prosecutor. That evening, Claire sat in her room feeling emotionally drained but oddly hopeful. Vanessa Sterling was dead. David would testify against the people who had killed so many innocent victims, and the Sterling criminal organization would finally face justice. Her baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Claire realized her daughter was probably going to be born into a world where the people who had tried to kill them were either dead or in prison. We did it, sweetheart, she whispered to her belly. We survived. But even as she said the words, Claire knew the real test would come later, when she had to build a new life as a single mother whose husband had tried to have her murdered, when she had to explain to their daughter why Daddy wasn't coming home, why they had to live with armed guards, why some stories didn't have happy endings. Tomorrow, she would wake up as a woman whose nightmare was finally ending, But she would also wake up as a mother preparing to raise a child in the shadow of betrayal and violence that would always be part of their family history. The hardest part wasn't surviving the murder plot. The hardest part was learning how to live afterward. Emma Grace Morrison was born on a snowy Tuesday morning in December, 6 weeks after David's testimony helped convict 12 members of the Sterling criminal organization. Claire held her daughter for the first time in the secure medical facility in Wisconsin, surrounded by the best security money could buy and the strangest family she'd ever imagined. Helen Morrison wept openly as she held her granddaughter, this tiny girl who had survived a murder plot before she was even born. Sarah Matthews, now officially Emma's godmother, took dozens of photos and made detailed notes about birth weight, length, and APGAR scores with professional precision. Linda Hayes maintained security protocols but allowed herself a rare smile when Emma wrapped her tiny fist around Linda's finger. "She's perfect," Helen whispered, cradling Emma with the expertise of someone who had raised children and grandchildren. "She's absolutely perfect." Claire looked at her daughter's face and saw only innocence. No trace of David's features, no shadow of the violence that had surrounded her conception and gestation. Emma was purely herself, untainted by the sins of her father or the crimes of his associates. "Hello, sweetheart," Claire murmured to her daughter. "I'm your mama, and I've been waiting to meet you." The first few weeks of motherhood passed in a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and the gradual realization that she was responsible for keeping this tiny person safe and happy. The secure facility provided everything they needed, but Claire found herself longing for normal experiences, taking Emma to the park, introducing her to neighbors, living without armed guards and bulletproof glass. 6 months after Emma's birth, Detective Walker brought news that changed their lives. The last of the Sterling associates was convicted yesterday, he announced during one of his regular visits. Marcus Sterling, the family patriarch, got life without parole for ordering 7 murders. The organization is finished. Does this mean we're safe? As safe as anyone can be. There are no known associates still at large, and the family's assets have been seized by the government. They don't have the resources or connections to threaten you anymore. So we can go home, Detective Walker smiled. You can go wherever you want to go. The question was, where did they want to go? Claire's house with David was full of memories she'd rather forget. Her job at the elementary school was still available, but returning to Chicago meant living with the constant reminder of everything that had happened. Helen had a different suggestion. "Come to Lake Forest," she offered. "I have more space than I need, and Emma should grow up knowing her grandmother. You could teach at the local elementary school, or not work at all if you prefer. The trust fund is large enough to support you both comfortably." Sarah, who had been offered a position as head nurse at a hospital in Madison, Wisconsin, suggested they could be neighbors. "Fresh start, good schools, lower cost of living, and you'd have built-in childcare when I'm not working." But it was Mick who provided the most unexpected option. He called on a warm spring evening when Emma was 8 months old and Claire was finally beginning to feel like they might have a future beyond mere survival. "I've been thinking about what you said about second chances," he began without preamble. "What about them? I bought a ranch in Montana, small town called Clearwater, about 2,000 people, surrounded by mountains and national forest. I'm learning to raise horses and fix fences and be the kind of man who helps his neighbors instead of hurting people." "That sounds wonderful, Mick. There's a good elementary school that needs teachers, a small hospital that could use an experienced nurse if Sarah's interested. And there's land available if you want to build a house where Emma can grow up without worrying about security cameras and armed guards." Claire looked at Emma, who was sitting in her high chair, happily smearing mashed sweet potatoes on every available surface. Her daughter deserved to grow up somewhere safe and normal, where the worst dangers were scraped knees and homework assignments. "Are you offering us a place to live? I'm offering you a place to start over. All of you. You, Emma, Sarah, even Helen if she wants to trade Lake Forest society for Montana ranching community. No strings attached, no expectations. Just friends helping friends build better lives." That night, Claire stood in her room at the secure facility, holding Emma while her daughter slept peacefully in her arms. Outside, spring was turning to summer, and somewhere in Montana, a former killer was learning to be a protector instead of a predator. The decision wasn't difficult. Chicago held too many painful memories. Lake Forest was generous but belonged to Helen's world, not Claire's. Wisconsin was nice but felt temporary. Montana sounded like home. 3 months later, Claire Morrison and her 11-month-old daughter moved to Clearwater, Montana. Population 2001. Sarah Matthews arrived a week later, having accepted a position at the local hospital. Helen Morrison surprised everyone by purchasing a cabin on mixed property and announcing her intention to spend summers in Montana and winters in Florida. "I'm too old to waste time on people who don't matter," she explained when asked about leaving her social circle in Lake Forest. "Emma is what matters. Being part of her life is what matters." Claire found work teaching second grade at Clearwater Elementary School, where her biggest challenges were helping children with math homework and organizing the annual spring carnival. Her colleagues knew she was a single mother who had relocated from Chicago, but they didn't know about murder plots or criminal organizations or the husband serving 20 years in federal prison. Emma's first word was mama. Her second was horse, which she said while pointing excitedly at the animals in mixed pasture. She took her first steps on mixed front porch, cheered on by an audience of adults who had chosen to become family, despite having no blood connections. On Emma's second birthday, Claire received a letter from David. It was the first contact she'd had with him since his sentencing. "Dear Claire," it began, "I know I have no right to contact you, and I don't expect forgiveness or response. I just wanted you to know that I think about you and Emma every day. I think about the man I used to be before I made choices that destroyed everything good in my life. I hope Emma grows up happy and safe, and I hope you found peace." Claire read the letter once, then put it in a box with other documents Emma might want to see someday when she was old enough to understand complicated truths about family and betrayal and redemption. But that day was far in the future. Today, Emma was a toddler who loved horses and finger painting, and the bedtime stories Claire read to her every night in their small house overlooking the mountains. Today, Claire was a woman who had survived attempted murder, testified against criminals, and built a new life from the ashes of betrayal. She was a teacher, a mother, a friend to people who had proven themselves trustworthy through their actions rather than their promises. Today was enough. As she tucked Emma into her crib and kissed her goodnight, Claire realized that the text message that had started this nightmare, "Job confirmed, timeline moved up, she won't see it coming," had been wrong on the most important detail. She had seen it coming, she had fought back, and she had won. Not through revenge or violence, but through courage and the help of people who chose to stand up for what was right instead of what was profitable. Emma stirred in her sleep, and Claire whispered the same words she said every night. "Sleep tight, sweetheart. Mama's here, and you're safe." Outside, Montana stars filled the sky with more light than Claire had ever seen in the city. Inside, a little girl dreamed peacefully, protected by a mother who had learned that the strongest women aren't born strong. They're forged in fires they never expected to survive. The wrong text message had led to the right life. And that, Claire thought as she settled into her own bed, was the kind of ending she could live with. Claire's story proves that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to fight back when everything seems impossible. If this story of survival, betrayal, and unexpected redemption moved you, hit that like button to help other people find Claire's incredible journey. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to choose between safety and truth? And if you want more true stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges, subscribe and ring that notification bell. These are the stories that remind us that heroes aren't born in comic books. They're forged in moments when good people refuse to let evil win. Your engagement helps these powerful stories reach the people who need to hear them most. Thank you for being part of this community where survival stories inspire strength.